This one is specifically to respond to questions about how much you can expect to make driving on DoorDash or Uber. What if I told you that the answer to that question is going to be this? The answer to that question is going to be the same, depending on the same variable on almost every other question in regards to what happens to you on these apps, and that is your market. What market are you in? That is going to always be the biggest variable to any of these stupid questions I see out there from drivers trying to be lazy. The answer that a driver in the middle of New York City gives versus somebody like myself in an ex-urban/suburban market of the Twin Cities is not going to be the same. And it comes down to revenue versus expenses. These differ from market to market, and they can vary wildly. So I'm going to point out a notable exception to what I've been telling about expenses, speaking of New York City, that I just thought of recently, and I wanted to share this with you right now. If you are a bicycle or pedestrian delivery person in the middle of New York City, for example, in the middle of Manhattan, you don't drive at all. Your vehicle expenses are zero. Or if you're in the middle of Los Angeles, for example, downtown LA, you're able to deliver on foot or scooter even. Your vehicle expenses, well, with the scooter, you may have modest vehicle expenses, but with the foot or bicycle delivery person, your expenses are close to zero. You may have some bicycle repairs that come up along the way, but again, those are very small. I know that even in this day and age, a new air tube for a bicycle is not going to cost you very much, not nearly as much as a tire does for a vehicle. Your market will determine the answer to these questions constantly and always. So quit being lazy, get up off your rear, and figure it out yourself. Stop coming to these Facebook groups and stop trying to get easy answers, because again, I think most people mean well, but they can give you the answers and they're going to be wrong for you because your conditions are much different than theirs. A pedestrian, a foot delivery person, or a bicycle delivery person in Midtown Manhattan is going to have minimal vehicle expenses. They're going to be judging their expenses based on how much time they spend doing this. That's their biggest consideration. They are actually looking at dollars per hour, and on a serious level. But you, on the other hand, if you're in a suburban market, for example, I think most drivers are in suburban markets, by the way. You're going to be looking at vehicle expenses. How much does it cost you to operate that vehicle? And I'm going to tell you right now, every Fortune 500 company in this country looks at this equation when it comes to how much they need to reimburse their employees for using their personal vehicles to travel to meetings and things like that. They're always considering these things. There's an entire company that's built for reporting and calculation of these expenses. That company is called Concur. And I've used Concur, by the way, in my past professional life. You put in how much miles you have driven for a company to get to a meeting, and they're going to come up with a reimbursement for it. They're going to use a reimbursement formula based on the IRS tax formula, and they're going to reimburse you that money accordingly. But that formula, of course, these companies, DoorDash and Uber Eats, don't reimburse individuals for their expenditures, so you have to figure out that formula for yourself. How much is your vehicle expense? Well, if you're me, you're driving a 2018 Kia Sorento, an SUV, with gas running at $4 per gallon. Right now it's down a little bit from there, so these numbers aren't exactly entirely accurate at the immediate moment. My vehicle expenses with my car insurance and my car payments 72 cents per mile, and that also includes the depreciation part of the formula. The IRS has that part available on irs.gov. Your gasoline is how much you spend on gas divided by how much gasoline you spend in the year divided by 12 months, which then divided by your typical mileage per month. You want to take your annual mileage and divide it by 12 to get your average miles per month. Then you divide your gasoline expenses per month by the average miles. That's going to be your cents per mile. In my case, with the gas prices the way they are, with my vehicle not being the most efficient in the world, it's close to 30 cents per mile just on gas alone. Depreciation, 25 cents per mile. Add it all up, 72 cents per mile. The IRS allows us to deduct 70 cents per mile. So I'm a little bit behind, but not by much. I deduct by miles, which is the easiest way to do this. And because the two are directionally correct to each other, in my case, it makes perfect sense to write off based on miles. You can also write off the actual expenses. That takes an entire year's worth of calculating. And if I'm already close enough to that in terms of my deferred maintenance and things like that goes, car payments and such, that's my answer, 72 cents per mile. You got to put in the legwork yourself. Stop depending on these boards to give you easy answers, because even if people are well-meaning and they give you their answer, it's going to be probably likely wrong for you. So even in Minnesota alone, for example, your driver who operates in the middle of the city of Minneapolis, your expenditure is going to be much different than where I live in Forest Lake, which is an exurb 35 miles north of downtown Minneapolis. My expenses are very different because these trips are very different. In Minneapolis, you can string them together back to back to back. You do a drop off and then you'll get one close by, pretty much immediately. That's not true up here. In Forest Lake, you will get a trip, and you often have to drive. You'll drive out of the zone and have to drive your way back home, which is the regular mode of operations up here. Those who don't operate that way, well, I feel for them because they're wasting a lot of time in parking lots waiting for trips. As you can see, I'm filming this from home, which is where I take my trips from. But if I have to go on a trip that takes me 20 miles east of here into Wisconsin, for example, or into a town that's on the St. Croix River, I have to also spend 20 miles to get back home, because I'm in an area. My drop-off is in an area where there's no restaurant anywhere close by at all. So I have to come back west. I have to come back to the city of Forest Lake, and usually that involves coming back here to this chair and waiting for my next trip. But at the same time, I just got a request just now. That's what you see me pressing the screen and hearing the beep come in. I'm waiting for Uber trips. Got an Uber trip. It was about 80 cents per mile, which on the surface doesn't sound bad until you realize that, of course, I had to go out. That's another one that would have went out 15 miles and 15 miles back. So I'm looking for not just 72 cents per mile. I'm looking for $1.44 per mile as my break-even point, and then I'm also looking for a few cents per mile for the amount of time that I spent at these places. Now, this was for Chuck and Don's Pet Store, which my wait time is typically 0, but again, 80 cents per mile is not enough. My break-even point is $1.44 per mile. My answers are different than yours, because if you're in a dense urban market, your answer is very different than me in an exurban / semi-rural market such as this. Forest Lake, Minnesota, as a city, has a population of about 20,000. But we serve about a 200 square mile area around us, which takes us into rural areas constantly. Fortunately, in this particular area, customers tend to understand the tip and the mathematicals around these trips that we have to make out of here to get to their farm, for example, or their ranch, or their whatever lake pond front home. Fortunately, most people here do understand that, and they do tip relatively well. They know how much it's taking for us to deliver their bags of dog food or their dinners to their houses. But you, if you're in the middle of an actual suburban ring or in the middle of an urban core, stop coming to the boards for answers. Because even if they give you an answer quickly, it's going to be wrong for you. So get off your lazy rear end and figure it out yourself. Put in the work to do the work. It's like somebody who expects to be buff just by buying a gym membership, but not willing to go to the gym and actually do the workouts to get in shape. And then they complain why their membership didn't work. That's what you're doing right now if you're coming onto these boards asking for easy answers. So stop it, put in the work, put in the effort, and figure it out. It's the only way you're going to get the correct answer for you and your market. That's always going to be the determining factor on how much you actually can make doing this. If you're in an area like mine, it's impossible to do this full time. Sometimes, if you do this with a full-time W-2 job, sometimes this can be a loss leader for you, which means that if you, for tax purposes, rack up a small monetary loss on the year, I wouldn't go nuts on that. But if you report a small monetary loss on the year, those losses can be used to offset your actual tax bill for your W-2 job, which is a plus. So anyhow, that's it for now. I just got an offer. We'll see you later. Peace out, homies.